What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Red and Bold Show. We're excited to talk 49ers football. We wish that we were talking about a win in the NFC Championship and watching the 49ers, getting ready to watch the 49ers play in the Super Bowl, but unfortunately, that didn't happen. And this is the first time that we've been back together since the 49ers were knocked out of the playoffs. So hopefully your morning is over and life is picking back up again. Sometimes it takes a little bit. I understand that. I am Mark Adams. I'm your host. You can find me at 49ers Camelot. I'm joined by my co-host Anthony Robertson, who you can find at 49ers Cutback. Ant, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. And, that morning period is real, and there's some people that won't come back from it for a while. I think looking at this season, and looking back on it now, you kind of have an understanding of the 49ers maybe a little bit ahead of schedule. And I think that is at least promising. Of course, when you're in the midst of it and the 49ers are finding ways to win no matter who's on the field, you start looking at it like, hey, maybe this is the time. Maybe there is an opportunity for the 49ers to get it done. But now we're starting to kickstart. We're starting to get into the offseason, what the 49ers need to do to get back on top. And I think that what happened in Seattle will motivate the 49ers team. They don't like the way that felt. They don't like the way that things went down. And now they're going to be looking to turn things around. And let's not forget, it's not like the 49ers have been a team that's just consistently lost to the Rams or Seahawks. They're used to winning those football games. In fact, they beat both of those teams during the season. So they're going to want to get back at it. They're going to want to get after these teams. And I think that's all we're all looking at is, can they catch the Seahawks now? I think the Seahawks prove that they are the class of the NFC West. I don't think it's that far off. I think the 41-6 made it seem worse than it is, but I think they're up there. And I think the Rams and the 49ers now got to go turn it around. But we've seen one thing that's true. You can turn it around in one season. I think that's what the 49ers are going to try to do in this offseason.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people, whether it's media or content creators, saying things like the 49ers are way behind the Seattle Seahawks, especially, and probably the Rams as well. And yeah, I mean, they finished third in the division, but I don't think they're way behind. If they would have been as healthy as those other teams, they're competing in those games. So I don't think they're way behind. I think that they had a chance to get the number one seed. If they had been as healthy as the Seahawks, I think that they would have had a really good shot. Now, the Seahawks are really, really good. And there's no doubting that. As much as we hate that team, we have to admit that they're good and are probably going to win the Super Bowl, most likely. So we'll see. I hope that the Patriots win, just because I hate the Seahawks and don't want to see them win. But I think that it's going to be the Seahawks, but we'll see. All right, let's talk some defensive coordinator before we jump in to some of the off-season type stuff that we think needs to happen. I've kind of narrowed it down to a few different guys. So Gus Bradley, Kyle Shanahan said, is the leader in the clubhouse internally. So that's not to be expected. He is his current role still is assistant coach of the defense. So I think that the thought was kind of always that, hey, we're going to bring in Robert Saleh, we're going to bring in Gus Bradley, and then it's automatically going to transition. But I don't know if Kyle Shanahan knew that Raheem Morris would be available, and I lost his Jim Schwartz. Yeah, lost his name for a second. That Jim Schwartz could potentially be available. Now, the Browns this morning have decided to hire a coach that's not Jim Schwartz. So the question is going to be, is Schwartz going to stay or is he going to go? I don't know that his personality matches that well with Shanahan's, but he would be my pick. Now, a lot of fans want Raheem Morris. I haven't heard anybody say that they want Gus Bradley. I think it's going to be Gus Bradley. That's my prediction. I'd rather see one of the other two. Not really any reason. I mean, if you look at the rankings of those guys' defenses when they were defensive coordinators, Raheem Morris's defenses weren't ranked as high as the other two. I think that Gus Bradley had some high-ranked defenses, but one of the criticisms that I've heard is that his defense has in kind of would get worse as they went along. So some think that the league has passed him by. I don't know if that's the case. I mean, he is one of the ones that taught this system, kind of brought it in. Uh, I still like Schwartz the most, but yeah, he is kind of a jerk sometimes. So I don't know that Kyle Shanahan's going to want him. Who do you think they're going to choose, and who would you like to see them choose?
This one is interesting because I do think that those are the main three candidates. I think that Gus Bradley's the internal hire. The 49ers brought him in, like you said, they were completely prepared that Gus Bradley would take over if Robert Saleh left. I think this was kind of a scenario the 49ers envisioned, and I think they were very smart to get Gus Bradley, who we got to remember, Kyle Shanahan wanted Gus Bradley in 2017 before Robert Saleh, but Gus Bradley decided to go to the Chargers instead. So it was a decision by Gus Bradley that prevented this marriage from happening because Kyle Shanahan wanted this defense. All three guys make sense. I do think that Jim Schwartz and Gus Bradley make the most sense because there's less fundamental changes with the defense. Now, Raheem Morris could change up his defensive philosophy to fit the 49ers, and I don't think it would be a huge deal, but there would be some subtle adjustments to what he likes to do. He prefers more five-man pressures, more guys out on the outside, more of a 5-2, 3-4 type look. So I think that would be different fundamentally, kind of the Vic Fangio thing for a while. And so I think that you look at Schwartz, and Todd Monken just got hired as the new Cleveland Browns coach. And that means Monken and Schwartz are going to get in a room and they're going to have a meeting. We know that the ownership wants to keep Schwartz. If Schwartz becomes available, I do believe the 49ers will interview Jim Schwartz for the job. I think Kyle Shanahan respects him so much. And the reason I believe that this is a thing that could happen as far as the interview goes, if Schwartz becomes available, is you look at what Kyle did finding Gus Bradley or Robert Saleh or whoever it was going to be. The reason he picked those guys is they ran a defense that he struggled with. Jim Schwartz runs a defense every single year that Kyle Shanahan struggles with. And it's very similar to what the 49ers do with a wide nine type look. Now, Schwartz has had some really talented football players, but he's a really good football mind. Kyle Shanahan likes to be pushed. Yeah, there's some abrasiveness with Jim Schwartz, but this guy is a proven commodity in the NFL. So I do think that there's something there. I think Kyle Shanahan does have a lot of respect for him. And respect goes a long way. The one thing I know about coaching, if there's a really good coach out there, you want him on your side. It don't matter if you've had friction in the past, you don't get along all the time. You want those guys because those guys are going to push you to be better and they're going to make your football team better. So even though I think Gus Bradley's probably the most likely pick for this job, I think you're right in that category. I think that if Schwartz becomes available, it would get very tempting for Kyle Shanahan to not go get Jim Schwartz, who's well respected and understands how to win in the NFL. And his defenses have been really good. Now he has Myles Garrett and he has a lot of really good talented players, but he would have Nick Bosa and he'd have some really good guys here. So Schwartz would be the ultimate pick. I am not against Gus Bradley. I think Gus Bradley's done a good job in his career, and I think he probably learned a lot last year from Robert Saleh. So continuity-wise, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I've heard some people say that he's not aggressive enough, and so I don't know. I mean, I just remember the Legion of Boom, and that's why I can't go away from it. But he is number 3 on my list of those. I mean, Raheem Morris hasn't. I don't know that he's had any great defenses. Gus Bradley has, and so is Jim Schwartz. I don't remember Raheem Morris having a great defense, but the guy knows his stuff, and he's close with Shanahan. So maybe he's the one that Shanahan really wants. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, right now Shanahan's not rushing. Raheem Morris has still been interviewing for jobs, right? Schwartz, the whole decision with Cleveland, was he going to be the head coach? Is he going to become available? He's already got Gus Bradley there. I think your only worry was potentially if Robert Saleh decided to hire Gus Bradley as defensive coordinator in Tennessee. That would be the thing that would kind of speed up the clock. But we don't know what's going on with those internal conversations. So right now, Kyle Shanahan has been able to kind of wait. He waited it out last year and it worked out. He got Robert Saleh. He's waiting this thing out to see if he can get the right guy. Morris, Schwartz, Gus Bradley. The good news is they're all experienced. They've all been defensive play callers in their career. This is not a Nick Sorensen situation. I know a lot of people have kind of said, well, Gus Bradley, it feels like a Nick Sorensen situation. No, Nick
You know,
Sorensen was a first-time defensive coordinator who really had no experience calling plays. All these guys, they know they've seen everything around this league. They've all been in the league, over the last, several years. So it's a completely different situation. Yes, Gus Bradley's an internal hire. Is it a sexy pick if they go with Gus Bradley? No. But like you said, the Legion of Boom, the things that he did there's a reason he got hired as a head coach in this league, is because he was so good at what he did. And then Dan Quinn subsequently took over and he got hired off of that. So it was a really good thing they had going there. Now he's got to evolve. I think his red zone defense and what he did this year with the red zone defense, I think is proven he can evolve. And I think he would be aggressive at times. There was a time when Robert Saleh wasn't aggressive at all either.
yeah.
Because Gus Bradley was his, the guy that he learned from. So you can evolve, you can change. And I hope that happens for Gus Bradley if he ends up being the 49ers defensive coordinator.
Yeah, Joe Carmack in the chat says, I like Schwartz, but I think Bradley is good. Chris, Mr. 49er, said Legion of Boom was like 15 years ago. But that doesn't mean that Gus Bradley's not any good. I mean, there are things that I was really good at 15 years ago that I'm still good at today. So, but I get your point, Chris, and I get the point of those that say that he, that when he was with the Chargers, his defense was really good, and then they slowly declined. And so, is that a player issue? Is that a coordinator issue? I don't know. Chris also said that Bradley doesn't put pressure on the quarterbacks. So we'll have to see. GOC 1230 says or asks, has Saleh poached KJ Wright? He would be an interesting future defensive coordinator. No, he has not poached KJ Wright yet, and hopefully he leaves him with the 49ers so that because I feel the same way. I'm interested to see what KJ Wright turns into.
Yeah, KJ Wright is, I know a lot of people are worried about Robert Saleh poaching certain guys. I think there's always a chance KJ Wright could get poached, but the 49ers can also fix that, right? They can go ahead and promote KJ Wright to whatever position that Robert Saleh's not going to make him defensive coordinator. So if you just made him a position coach, then he's not going to hire him without, it being a lateral move. And I think the 49ers aren't in the business, the way that they talk about players, of letting good coaches go either. So even though I think that they allow coaches to go a lot of times, I think that Kyle Shanahan is going to be very picky with it. And honestly, with Robert Saleh already being a head coach out in the league, he's got a lot of contacts, a lot of coaches that he has experience with. So he's got a broader tree now as far as a head coach than he had when he left originally to go to New York. So I think there's a fear of losing KJ Wright. That would really stink. But I think the 49ers have some ways that they can go about keeping him inside the building, because I do think that he's going to be, an eventual rock star for this coaching staff if he doesn't get poached beforehand. So I do think that he's the eventual defensive coordinator for the 49ers or for somebody else. It's just a matter of time. But you don't go from quality control coach to defensive coordinator. Not even DeMeco Ryans did that. He went quality control, then he went position coach, then he transitioned to defensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's a big step. So, all right, let's shift gears. I want to take a look at each of the positions on the 49ers team and try to determine what they should do this offseason. I don't know that we're going to spend a lot of time deciding what they will do, at least today, because who knows what they're going to do. But maybe we can talk through what we think that they should do, because they do have some holes to fill. They have some changes that they need to make. So let's start at the quarterback position. And despite Eric Dane in the chat, who said we could use a quarterback upgrade, trade Purdy and Kyle to the Raiders for the #1 overall pick and draft Mendoza and sign his college coach. That is not going to happen. Kyle Shanahan's not going anywhere. Brock Purdy's not going anywhere. And why would you get rid of Brock Purdy, who we know is good, for Fernando Mendoza, who had a great season, but we don't know what he's going to look like in the NFL. So I'm not in favor of something like that.
No, I mean, I think that would be a very bold move. I don't know if the Raiders would be willing to give up the amount of compensation it would take, because it would take a lot more than just Mendoza to get Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy. You're talking at least 4 first-round picks. Like, this would be one of the most epic deals in the history of the NFL. I mean, John Gruden going to Tampa Bay from the Raiders was a huge ripple effect in the NFL as Tampa Bay won a Super Bowl And we know the draft compensation there was huge as well. So I don't think that those types of things are realistic, only because you don't see coaches traded very often. And when you get a guy like Kyle Shanahan, the Raiders would have to really pay a lot. And let's be honest, John Lynch is not sending Kyle Shanahan to the Raiders in hopes of landing a college coach. I just don't think he's going to do that. And, that would be something that Jed York would have to sign off on, and he's not going to sign off on that. Eddie D would never sign off on a Joe Montana trade to Bill Walsh, and he's not, and Jed York's not signing off on a Kyle Shanahan trade either.
Yeah, I agree. So with the quarterback room, obviously Brock Purdy is the starter. Would you, a lot of people are talking about trading Mac Jones. Would you keep Mac Jones or would you trade Mac Jones?
I think there has to be a really good deal for you to move on from Mac Jones. I don't think you're against it. I think you understand the worth of Mac Jones. You know that as long as you have him, you have a safety blanket. And so the 49ers would feel very comfortable with him going into any situation. Brock Purdy hasn't been able to stay healthy for a full season for the most part. He's had bumps and bruises and things that bothered him last year, I think a little bit more extreme than we're used to. But I think when you look at Mac Jones, he's a really good player to have in your back burner. But you can also get something else, right? You have Mac Jones under control for one more year. We know how important that is. But you could also get another player for potentially four years if you can get a second-round pick. So I don't think it's out of the question that Mac Jones gets moved. I think the 49ers are going to listen to all offers. And I think with how weak the quarterback draft is, I think there could be a team that's a quarterback-needy team that's willing to give a little bit more for Mac Jones. And as soon as you get up to second round or more, second round and another pick, or even maybe putting it a part of a deal to get another player, I think it becomes enticing. And then you start looking around the league like, hey, can we just get another guy that can help us win games? So I do think that Mac Jones has the potential to get traded. I think he does want to get traded. I think he wants to be a starting quarterback, get another contract. But I think that the 49ers are going to let this thing play out because I do think some teams are going to come calling and maybe there'll be a little bit of a bidding war for Mac Jones' services.
Yeah, I think you keep Mac Jones unless you're blown away with some kind of trade. But otherwise, you're keeping him. At the running back position, there was I should have held on to this, but there was a post or something about running backs that have over 400 touches in a season and how they perform the following year, and it's not good. And we've already seen how Christian McCaffrey had a great 2023 and then missed almost the entire 2024 season. I think that he had kind of a similar situation after his 2000 or his 1,000 season in Carolina. But, so we're going into 2026 with the chance that Christian McCaffrey may, especially now that he's getting about that 30-year age, he may just be a shell of himself. Now, maybe he'll prove us all wrong and rush for 1,000 yards again. He's definitely not the same player that he was, even though he was great this season. I saw a clip. I think it was from the NFC Championship game when Brock Purdy was hurt in Philly back in 2022, the 2022 season. On that play where McCaffrey hurdled somebody and ran for the touchdown. And you compare that play to what we saw this season, I mean, it was night and day. Like, he looked like he had jets on the back of him compared to what he looked like this season. So what do you think they should do at running back? Brian Robinson is a free agent. Maybe Jordan James has what it takes. Kyle seems to be excited about him, but we really didn't get a look at him until the final game of the season, and it was a very small look. What do you think they're going to do there?
Yeah, I do think they're going to add a running back. I believe they'll probably sign a free agent running back, maybe even draft a running back. I don't think they're sold on Isaac Rendo, and I think that that's part of it. So when you look at the running back room, you have Christian McCaffrey, you have Jordan James, and I do believe that they're high on him. I think that one of the things the 49ers are struggling with right now is when they don't have a player in the backfield that's a dual threat. I think that's what kind of hurt them with Brian Robinson is they weren't able to kind of get the holes and things that they needed in the running game, so he couldn't be as dynamic as they wanted. If they had a guy who was a threat in the passing game, the way Christian McCaffrey is, then they could go ahead and have them out there a little bit more. I think they probably wanted to rest Christian McCaffrey more. I think Christian McCaffrey wanted to rest more, but they couldn't get into looks that were going to have Brian Robinson on the field because teams just didn't respect him in the passing game. So when you went to throw with him on the field, they kind of just ignored him for the most part. And so I think that that's something they're going to look into getting, is a guy who's a little bit more versatile. I think you're right. They could add some speed to the room as well. Getting a guy that can absolutely put pressure out on the edge is something that could definitely help this running game. So I think that's going to be a point of emphasis. So I look for them to add. I think it'll be a couple guys. I don't think it's going to be a big name running back, right? A big name running back's not coming here to split time with Christian McCaffrey, but somebody that's been flying under the radar a little bit, somebody that's looking to kind of enhance their opportunities and play for Kyle Shanahan. I think there's a chance there. And then I do believe they'll end up taking one in the draft or getting a priority free agent that they're super high on. Because they need to continue to build this room. And we don't know what we're going to get from Isaac Guerendo, but him being a healthy scratch all year is not pointing in the right direction.
Yeah. At wide receiver, the team needs a lot of help. Jawan Jennings is a free agent. Kendrick Bourne is a free agent. We don't know what some of those young guys like Jordan Watkins are going to look like. So what do you think that they do there? They still have Demarcus Robinson. They have Ricky Pearsall, but I don't like, and I'm a Ricky Pearsall guy. I love the dude, but I don't know what to expect because he's always hurt. And do you remember in, I think it was the Mike Nolan days when they signed Jonas Jennings? Remember, he was a real expensive left tackle and he was always injured. Do you remember what the fan base called him?
I don't. What did they say?
They called him Glass Jennings. And so I don't want Pearsall. I did see somebody the other day call him Glass Pearsall, and I don't want him to have that nickname. So to me, they've got to go out. This may be one area that they go out and get a big name player. Maybe a trade for Justin Jefferson. I've heard that thrown out. I've heard Brian Thomas Jr., other guys like that. They need somebody with some legit speed, somebody that's like a real number one, because I don't think that Ricky Pearsall is a number one. Demarcus Robinson's not. If they brought back Jawan Jennings, he's probably a 3. We don't know what Jordan Watkins is. So what do you think that they should do there? Do you bring back Jennings? Do you bring back Bourne? Do you just let both of them go and start fresh?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a priority to get a legit X receiver. The situation that played out with Brandon Ayuk is what's changing the formula for the 49ers. And it's why they couldn't create some space when it came to the defensive backfield. And that's why Seattle's defense was so much more suffocating. They didn't have as much area to cover, right? If you have a legitimate vertical threat, that player can push down the field. If you have a guy that can win one-on-one and generate space on his own and not have to have it manufactured, it does a lot. It's nothing against Jawan Jennings, but he was never built to be an X wide receiver. That's not what his role was supposed to be. When they signed him back, it was to play with Brandon Ayuk, and then they were bringing in Ricky Pearsall to play Z, and that's what Ricky Pearsall plays. The 49ers need a legit X receiver. There's going to be players available. You brought up via trade, right? There's Justin Jefferson. There's A.J. Brown. There's talk that Tyreek Hill is going to get cut. There's all these guys that are going to be available, and they've got to land on one of them. I think that, a guy like Alec Pierce, I've heard that name a lot. I've heard, them mention and maybe trading for other players as well. So I think that they're going to be aggressive when it comes to X receiver. I think that could mean that Jawan Jennings isn't back. I think that they love Jawan Jennings, and I think all the fan base loves Jawan Jennings and what he provides and the attitude and the culture. But I think when you look at what you'd have to pay him, you need to be able to put that money into an X receiver. And they've got to make sure that they are ready to go at wide receiver, because they can't have what happened this season. It makes it tougher on Christian McCaffrey. It makes it tougher on George Kittle. It makes it tougher on Brock Purdy. They need space generators. And so I think getting an X receiver is going to be part of that. I think they address it in free agency or via trade with a bigger name player. And then I think that they go ahead and they address it in the draft as well. There's a lot of guys who are kind of vertical threats, some guys who can get down the field and generate. Now, those guys are going to be kind of on the back burner, right, with Kyle Shanahan, but you've got to have guys who are ready to go in the future. So I think wide receiver is going to be a main position to go, but I do think Juwan Jennings and Kendrick Bourne are probably going to be gone. They're going to be rolling with whoever they bring in at X, Ricky Pearsall at Z, and then DeMarcus Robinson will be your third receiver. And I think they'd feel comfortable with that. But, I think they need to add a lot of speed at the wide receiver position. I think it's ever more clear it's to catch the Seahawks. That's what you have to do. You have to have guys who can win. The Rams showed that. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, the guys that they have, the threats that they have, that's what the 49ers need. They need threats out on the outside.
Yeah, and they showed in the Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl against the Chiefs, that they weren't able to beat those corners that man coverage. And that's a lot of was kind of reoccurring when they were playing the Seahawks, that they couldn't get open. And so not only did Brock Purdy not have time to throw, but he didn't really have anyone to throw to most of the time. So they definitely have to do something where they bring in some guys that can create some space. At tight end, we don't know what it's gonna look like for George Kittle, who's going to be out for a while. I doubt he's going to be back for the start of the season. In fact, I don't know if he's going to be back next season at all. Surgery went well. Sounds like it was a clean tear to where maybe he could come back sooner rather than later. But still, I'm not counting on him for 2026. If he comes back, then great. That's gravy. But if not, I think that they need to be prepared to play 2026 without him. And so I definitely think that they're going to bring back Jake Tonjes. He's a restricted free agent. They need to bring him back. As a restricted free agent, he's going to be able to negotiate a new deal with other teams, but then the 49ers have the first right of refusal. So in all likelihood, he's going to be back. So what do you think there? Are they going to go get somebody like a Kyle Pitts through free agency? Are they going to draft somebody? They probably need to start looking for a George Kittle replacement anyway. So what do you see them doing at tight end?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jake Tonjes probably signs a contract extension with the 49ers before he's ever able to negotiate with other teams. We've seen them do this before with restricted free agents, guys like Juwan Jennings and Colton McKivitz, never even let them get to that point. So that way they don't have to put the tender on them. That way they don't have to pay him more than they want to. They can come to an agreement, and then Tonjes can go through free agency the next year. I think he's the most likely to take over George Kittle's role until Kittle comes back. I think that Luke Farrell struggled a lot this year. So I think the 49ers are looking to add to the tight end room. I don't think it's a big name, though. I think a lot of people are throwing out Kyle Pitts and, some of the big name tight ends that are out there. I don't think that's the case. Kyle Shanahan hasn't been a coach that's been willing to go to a lot of 12 personnel looks. And so I don't think that that's what he's going to do. I mean, you just look at the snap counts when George Kittle was playing, him and Jake Tonjes. Tonjes and Kittle very rarely played together, mainly in goal line situations, short yardage situations. So I don't think they put as much value on big-time tight end as they're going to put on big-time wide receiver this year. So I think their investment's going to go to wide receiver. I do think that they're going to look in the draft and bring in a young guy. I think that's a good situation for them. Let that guy compete and see what he can do. And if they get a shot to get one of the big tight ends, maybe they'll go that direction, and we'll see what happens. But I think it's more than likely middle rounds, 49ers look and find a tight end that can block and can catch, a guy that can potentially push Luke Farrell, maybe make a change there eventually. But I don't think they're going to invest as big as people want them to in free agency for a tight end.
Yeah, that's something that I'd love to see them do, but you're probably right on what they're going to do. On the offensive line, sounds like Trent Williams plans to return. Spencer Burford is a free agent. Ben Barch is a free agent. Matt Hennessy is a free agent. Austin Pleasance is an exclusive rights free agent, and what that means is he doesn't yet have 3 years of accrued service. So he can only negotiate with the 49ers. So he can't go negotiate with other teams like what we mentioned with Jake Tonjes. What do you think that they're going to do, or no? What do you think they should do at? Because we all we can say that they need to replace Jake Brendel, but they're probably not going to do that. And I don't think Brendel was quite as bad this year as he was in previous years. Although I think that what makes him look bad is those plays that get blown up, and then you see him just standing there looking instead of actually doing something. I think that's what makes him look worse. I don't know. I'm not an offensive line guy. I'm not the film guy, but that's just my my feeling. But what do you think they need to do? They obviously have to replace Spencer Burford at left guard. Anything else you think they're going to do, or you think they're just going to find somebody to plug in there and leave the rest as is?
I think they need to consider making a change at center, and I get it. Jake Brendel, like you said, I mean, I think his blown block rate was like seventh best in the NFL. Like he was pretty good when you look at the numbers. But I think what you see from the 49ers offensive line is they struggle to get push, to get movement up front, to create lanes for the running backs. Jake Brendel's getting older now. I mean, he's going to hit 34 years old. You're asking a lot of this guy. It's the guy that's been an Iron Man. Then last year, all of a sudden, he starts struggling a little bit with injuries. So I do think that they need to start thinking about an investment there. I think they do need to get somebody that can step in and play well. And if there's one position we've seen the 49ers along the offensive line that's not left tackle that they've invested in, it has been center. Weston Richburg, Alex Mack, they've been willing to bring in guys that were going to be really good. Now, I don't know if financially that's what they're going to do, but I think that's what they should do. I think that they need to invest in left guard, and I think they need to invest in center. Now, what does that mean as far as investment? It could mean free agency. Lou was asking about Linderbaum in free agency. I think Linderbaum is going to break the bank. I think he's the best guy out there. CBS predicted that he's going to go to the 49ers. I think that would be a dynamite pickup for them and really change the interior part of this offensive line. But they need to invest in the draft, and they need to invest in free agency with offensive line in some way, shape, or form. I think all you have to do is look at the 49ers when their run game was really, really successful. You have one of two things that are going to happen. If you go back to 2019, their run game was the best because they had so much speed to put pressure on everyone on the outside, and then they had the blocking on the edge that could handle it. That was where they really killed everyone. I know they ran a lot of gap scheme, but that's what started it. Then you look at 2023, and they had bigger individuals in at guard when their running game was really, really rolling with Christian McCaffrey. They had Aaron Banks, who we can say all we want about Banks, but when he was healthy, he could move people in the run game. And then you looked at right guard, and they had John Feliciano, who had taken over for Burford. They had big interior offensive linemen who were friends fitting the scheme, and they were able to get movement and get guys going. So I think you either need to have the extreme speed element, like Mike McDaniel did with Miami again, and prove that could still work, or you need to have those big guys inside. They don't have those big guys inside right now. I do think Dominic Pooney is capable of being that type of guy, so I'm okay with Pooney. But I think your center and guard, that's the question mark. And I think that's why they need to address it. Guard for sure. I think that everyone would feel a lot more comfortable, though, if they started moving in a different direction from Jake Brendel.
Yeah, Lou said in the chat, we cannot run because of Brendel. And like I am probably, other than John Chapman, I'm probably the hardest on Jake Brendel. So I'm trying to be nice to him and say that he wasn't as bad. Maybe he was worse, but maybe I just am getting I'm getting nice in my old age. But yeah, I would love to see them replace Brendel. And if they did it, with somebody who's already established and really good, then I think that if they can get the run game back, then this is going to be a different team, because I think that was the biggest thing missing, other than the wide receivers that can't get open. All right, how about the specialists? I think they have to bring back Eddie Pinheiro. I don't know about Thomas Morstead. I think that he was elite at pinning teams back. But where do you fall on Eddie Pinheiro and Thomas Morstead?
Yeah, I think Eddie Pinheiro has to come back. I think the 49ers have proven they'll invest in kicker Robbie Gould. They kept paying him for a long time. Pinheiro was just so good. You could count on him every single time. His one missed field goal is a 64-yard attempt that he comes up literally a half a ball short of making. That type of kicker is exactly what Kyle wants. He wants to feel confident that if he gets 60 in, that guy's going to knock it through. And I think that he got that from Eddie P. So I do think they'll bring him back. When it comes to Thomas Morstead, I think they bring him back, not so much for the fact that he's a great punter at this time in his career, but you brought up the way he's situationally good. He can pin guys back. He punts well. Yes, he's not going to be able to flip the field like some of the other punters that you're going to have, but you want stability. And I think he adds stability. And that was the name of the game for the special teams. We want to have a constant about it, right? We want a kicker that's going to be good and consistent. We want a long snapper that's always going to get the ball right there. And we want a punter that can handle the job. And we want him to be able to pin teams back when we need him to. And I thought he did that really well. I think when he started catching or having some problems is when it got into December and the playoff time. And all of a sudden you're dealing with big wins. And so now your 45-yard punt ends up being a 35-yard punt because the wind catches it. So I expect them to bring Morstead back. I think they'll bring the battery back for consistency. And I think that that's probably the way to go if you want a consistent special teams, is kind of stick with the guys who are doing a really good job.
Yeah, and John Weeks is the long snapper is a free agent as well. So all three of those guys are free agents that they would have to bring back. Also, a couple of other special teamers. Sky Moore is a free agent, and so is Luke Gifford. I think you have to bring both of those guys back. I don't know if they're going to be able to bring back Sky Moore, but Luke Gifford, to me, the special teams, the punt and kick teams were different when he was out there.
I mean, Luke Gifford's one of the best special teamers in the NFL. And that's going to be the question mark. Is another team going to value him more than what the 49ers did? The 49ers didn't pay him a ton of money last year, and he's kind of been relegated now to just a special teams role. He played in Tennessee. Is Robert Saleh going to bring him there for special teams reasons, and then let him play some linebacker? I think he's going to hold value around the league. I think the 49ers do want to bring him back. I think the 49ers probably bring back him or Garrett Wallow. One of those guys come back. They're both good special teams players. Gifford's the better special teams player, but I think that you're going to have, one of those guys back. I do think that they would value him a lot, and I think the 49ers want Luke Gifford back. He's a solid backup linebacker who plays really good special teams, all-pro special teams player, so for sure. With Sky Moore, I think Kyle, the comments that he had during the season, they believe he can do more in the offense if he has time to go through the nuances and work with Leonard Hankerson on what he's supposed to do. So I think that they see some value in him in the offense as well, but he really stabilized the kick return and punt return game. Even though he made mistakes here and there, I think they were good learning experiences that Brant Boyer can coach him up and build him up on. I think that they'd like him to come back. I think they'll probably push for him to come back. Then the question is, who returns with him? Because I do think that was a little bit of a problem as you got later in the season. They kicked away from Sky Moore and let Brian Robinson do it. And Robinson wasn't as consistent. They need someone a little bit more dynamic. Is it as simple as, Jacob Cowing can handle that with them? Well, Jacob Cowing's got to make the team as a wide receiver first. So yeah, I think it's a little bit more confusing with that. But I do think that they're going to push to have Sky Moore back.
Yeah, and Jacob Cowing wasn't as good at in return duties as his predecessor or his replacement was. This just in from Diana Rossini. Browns defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz is not happy about being passed over for the head coaching job per sources. He remains under contract, so the situation still needs to be sorted out. So there's still hope that we can get Jim Schwartz. I think it's a slim hope, but all right, let's move through the defense quickly here. Defensive tackle Kalia Davis is a restricted free agent. Jordan Elliott and Kevin Givens are free agents. Defensive end, Bosa needs some help. Yetur Gross-Matos is a free agent. Cleveland Farrell is a free agent. Sam Okwanu and Robert Beal Jr. are restricted free agents. I think that Okwanu is going to be back. He's the only one on that list that I'm confident will be back. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that that's the only one you can kind of show confidence in, knowing for sure they'll probably come back. The restricted free agent part makes it easier. I think with the other guys, you're either going to get Kalia Davis or Jordan Elliott back, probably one of them. They kind of slide into that Kevin Givens role where you want some veteran depth behind your tackles. And then I think with Yetur Gross-Matos, I think that it's probably run its course, right? The one thing you need is guys who can stay healthy. He'll probably end up leaving and going and playing 17 games next year for whatever team he plays on, just the way things work out. But they need somebody to fill that role. I just don't think it's him. I think that they'll probably go a different direction. And there's some guys who are available that used to be a part of this team that would make a lot of sense. And Arden Kia, Charles Amenahu, those guys would definitely fit right back into that role. But no matter what, I think they have to make a change there. Gross Matos just couldn't stay healthy. You've got to have health. So do I expect? I think it'll probably be more likely, like you said, Okuwanu, Kalia Davis probably as a rotational player, as long as he doesn't get offered more money on the open market, and then go ahead and bring back, some of the guys. Maybe you bring back a Robert Beal Jr. just on the 90-man roster once you let him kind of just clear. You don't have to put an offer sheet on him. I think those types of things will probably happen, but I think you hit it right. Okuwanu and then probably one of those defensive tackles.
Do you think that Collins and West are going to be the defensive tackle starters? And do you think that they're going to get somebody to line up opposite of Nick Bosa? Bryce Huff's still there, but I think he's more. I think that they need somebody different. That's just my opinion. I don't know that they'll do that, but what do you think is going to happen in those two scenarios?
Yeah, and Chris, Mr. Niner, brought up Keon White, is good. And Keon White is going to be a big part of what the 49ers do, and he can fit that role. I think a lot of the pass rushing is going to come from defensive ends on the interior. I think they went back to that from what Robert Saleh did in 2019, 2020, and beyond with Eric Armstead. And I think that's what they're going back to first off. I think that Alfred Collins is probably going to be a starting defensive tackle next year. I think that they need to find a starting veteran defensive tackle to go with him initially. I think that you want CJ West and Alfred Collins kind of splitting snaps. I don't know if we want them playing together in year 2. I'm not saying it's out of the question for year 3, year 4, but I do think that the 49ers need a guy that's a little bit more of a threat as a penetrator pass rusher on early downs. We know that they want to earn the right, to get there on third down and get after the quarterback with these NASCAR packages, but I think they need to have another defensive tackle. I'm not saying go break the bank. Go get a guy that can just do a little bit more. And so I think that they might do that. So I expect one of these guys to start. I think Alfred Collins will probably be the most likely. I look for him to take a step forward in year 2. I think West will as well. I thought he showed a lot of promise. I'm very excited about those guys. But I think 49ers, as far as depth and what you need from this football team, they need to add a defensive tackle. Probably somebody in free agency and someone in the draft. And we're hearing this a lot about a lot of positions, but that's probably how they're going to have to go to build depth at some of these key positions.
At linebacker, Fred Warner needs help. He needs some help from his guys. I don't know if D Winters is the answer or not. He looked great early in the season when Warner was healthy, but once Warner went out, he didn't look like the same player. Eric Kendricks is a free agent. Then you have Nick Martin, who is still, from what I understand, in the concussion protocol, which is definitely concerning. I hope that the guy's okay, but I just don't know what to expect from him next year because he barely played this past season. So what do you think they need to do at linebacker?
Yeah, I think this one's complicated. You bring up D Winters, and I think that there were moments where he really flashed, and you're like, wow, that is the kind of player you need to play next to Fred Warner. And then you see the inconsistency. Sometimes he gets bodied in the run game, not able to get, where he needs to get and make the plays, some missed tackles, some things like that. So I think he's got to become more consistent if he's going to be the will linebacker next to Fred Warner. I do think Fred Warner makes everything a lot easier and a lot better for everybody else. But I think that they had fully planned on this year being Nick Martin. And, I don't know how this concussion is going to kind of derail those plans. But I think when you look at Nick Martin, the physicality, how big, how fast, the instincts, I think that they were always hoping year 2 would be kind of the year he takes off. So I think those two guys are going to be in the mix to play will linebacker. And I think they probably need to address it, in the draft as well. I don't know if they're going to go the free agency route. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll just bring back Eric Kendricks to come in and compete and just make sure that those other guys are ready to go. But I still think they're going on the young movement at linebacker next to Fred Warner. And I think that's probably what they're going to continue to do. I expect them to bring somebody in draft less than free agency, but I wouldn't mind them bringing in somebody in free agency to play next to Fred Warner. I just don't know if they're ready to to move on from the young guys that they've kind of invested in yet. But we'll see. I think it's going to be an interesting offseason for linebacker.
Yeah. At cornerback, Jason Pinnock is a free agent. Chase Lucas is a restricted free agent. And down the stretch, Renardo Green, I think he had a tough sophomore year. We all saw him getting chewed out by Kyle Shanahan. Was this just a fluky season for Green, maybe due to injury? This is one of your Florida State guys. Or is this a trend? Do they need to replace Renardo Green?
I think they need to bring in people to compete. That's for sure. I don't know what's going on with Renardo Green. I don't know the extent of why Kyle Shanahan's yelling at him on the sidelines or whether they're having that conversation about. We've seen Renardo Green have, some moments here and there. He was dealing with neck injuries this year. Are the 49ers okay with his, with what he's doing injury-wise? We know that if they feel like you can play and you're not playing, that's going to kind of put a bad taste in their mouth. So I don't know what's going on with that part of it. I do know Renardo Green didn't play that bad. Do I want him to be a lot better in run support? I do. I think that is probably the biggest thing that bugged me the most about Renardo Green this year was that, followed by situational football, where you're in the end of the half or into the game, and all of a sudden you're falling for a double move when you just can't give up the big play. I thought that those things were uncharacteristic of Renardo Green and what we had saw at Florida State and then saw in his rookie season, where he was willing to come up and make plays and be physical, and he was staying on top of players consistently. So I want to say it's a sophomore slump. I don't know that for sure. I think the 49ers are probably going to try to address cornerback anyways. I think when you look at the depth, they need a better player than Darrell Luter Jr. They need to upgrade nickel corner behind Upton Stout. They are not going to probably bring back Jason Pinnock as a big nickel. So they're going to have to invest in cornerback in the draft. I look for them to address it in free agency as well. And one of the guys that they absolutely love, I'm going to throw this out there, Cam Taylor-Britt. They loved him in the draft. They've liked him for a long time. He's a free agent. He is a competitor. So I could see them potentially bringing in Cam Taylor-Britt. And if that happens, Renardo Green's on notice. He's probably going to get beat for that position. So I think that it's going to be interesting. I think they're still okay with Renardo, but we're going to find out.
One of the positions that I think needs change the most is at safety. I like Malik Mustafa, although I feel like he had a bit of a sophomore slump even after, part of the season he was gone because of an injury. Marquis Siegel looked good at times, bad at times, which you expect from a rookie. Jair Brown, I just can't figure out. Like, he will make a game impacting play that's great one play, and the next play do one of the dumbest things you've ever seen. And so I think that they have to upgrade over Jair Brown. If that's Marquis Siegel, I don't know. What do you feel they need to do at safety? Do you like Mustafa still? Because we both liked him as a rookie. Do you like Siegel? Do you think that they need somebody? I saw that somebody in the chat, I've lost it now, but somebody in the chat said that we need a true ball hawk kind of safety. So what do you think that they need to do there?
I do think that their safeties are pretty similar, with their skill set. I think Jair Brown was supposed to be the ball hawking safety. I think if you look at what he did his rookie season playing for Steve Wilkes, there were moments where you saw it. I just don't think we've seen the consistency. That's what you're talking about. You see these big time plays, and then all of a sudden it's something bad. And what you're hoping is that those big plays were going to be followed up by solid plays and less of the bad plays. And he's been through 3 years now in the NFL, and I don't think that we've seen it from Jair Brown. So I do think that they need to invest in safety. I think it is time to go get a guy that can get it done. And I know they don't really like paying at the position. We've seen them move on from guys who are getting to their second contracts, let guys like Talanoa Hufanga walk. But I think that might be what they have to do again. And I'm not against competition where they push Malik Mustafa either, because I think that Malik Mustafa, though I like the player a lot, I don't think we saw the best play from Malik Mustafa this season. Is it because he came off the injury? He didn't have training camp? I don't know, but I thought that him, Jair Brown, Marquis Siegel were very inconsistent all season, and they need to find consistency on the back end. I still like Marquis Siegel. I think that he can develop into a good player. I love the way he tackles. He's got elite speed. He's one of those guys that can definitely transform into a really good player. but they've got to make a decision when it comes to the other safety. I am in agreement that they should probably go get a ball hawking free safeties type player, a guy that you can line up in the slot against a tight end at times and he can go ahead and take them down. I think Upton Stout kind of proved that that's what you need. I know Upton Stout played nickel, but they need another safety that can kind of do that. I think Marquis Siegel is a guy that could develop there. We just haven't seen him finish. But I like some of the safeties that are going to be free agency, and I love a lot of the safeties that I started watching in the draft. I've started doing my draft, deep dive, and I've looked at some safeties, and there's some really talented safeties. And I think we saw the impact of a guy like Nicky Menwari made for Seattle, and that was my guy last year, Nicky Menwari. I knew he was going to be an absolute beast, and he is. Those type of guys can change their defense. I think the 49ers need to find one.
All right, before we close out, I want to play a little fill in the blank game. Just 2 questions. I didn't prepare you for this, so I'm throwing you a curveball. So I'm going to say the sentence and then you fill in the blank. All right. Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Hall of Famer is
dumb. I don't understand it. I don't like when anyone tries to make somebody wait because of anything personal or whatever. 8 Super Bowls that he was a part of. This dude is literally the definition of a first ballot Hall of Famer. I just don't understand it. I don't get it. It was flabbergasting to me. I don't understand it. Bill Belichick is a Hall of Famer. He should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. One of the greatest coaches in the NFL history.
And he was a brilliant defensive coordinator for the New York Giants back in the Bill Parcells days. And that defense was really tough on the 49ers. So yeah, I agree with that. The one thing that I would say is that his not being picked is actually good for Roger Craig. So I'm hoping that this is the year that Roger Craig gets selected. We'll find that out. I think next week. Shedeur Sanders being named a Pro Bowler is
laughable. I mean, the Pro Bowl is at this point, right? I mean, like everyone starts saying they don't want to go, and eventually you're just running out of players, and you put in Shedeur Sanders. But the reason is it's not so much an indictment on the player who did okay for his rookie season, but it's more about he barely played this season. Like he would play 7 games and where he's a Pro Bowler. No, like come on. I mean, the Pro Bowl at this point is just I don't know. It's just an event to have at this point. I don't get it, but nothing against Shedeur Sanders, but you play 7 games and you're not a high profile guy who tore it up in those 7 games. I don't think you deserve to play or be in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I saw that, and I posted on X, like asking, is this April Fool's Day or something? Because this is nuts. And Browns fans, man, they're like convinced that he's definitely a Pro Bowler. Maybe he will be someday, but he definitely wasn't this season. All right, tell us about FanDuel and what you're dealing with there.
Yeah, so FanDuel right now, all the Super Bowl picks are up. If you're going to bet, they got all the cool player props. They got the Super Bowl bets. You can bet on who's going to be MVP, all that. Right now, Seattle's favored at 4.5 points. So if you want to put money on it, bet with FanDuel. And I've been having a lot of fun doing player props. I do all that stuff on the side. It's a lot of fun. And it gives you a little bit more to be invested. And you can bet on all kinds of crazy stuff with novelty bets and stuff like that. So if you're going to bet, check out FanDuel.
Great stuff. And thanks everybody for watching or listening wherever you're doing so. We would appreciate it if you'd take a minute and like and subscribe. That really helps us out a lot. So everybody have a great rest of your week. We'll do our best to be back again